All right, today, guys, we have got Benjamin von Wong with us, coming to you live from Montreal. How's the weather over there?
Hey guys, how you doing? The weather today has been beautiful. However, there was a whiteout, like a snowstorm, a couple days ago. So it's really weird right now. One would assume that by April 20th, snow would stop, but no, Montreal has a life of its own.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine living back in Canada at the moment. Far too cold.
How long you been away from
Yeah,
Canada, Mike?
Oh, 20 years.
20 years.
no desire to come back to the snow.
Decided to come back in August, maybe. That's about it.
I
I actually had a plan to come back
Yeah.
this year, probably in June, July, but I think that's on hold at the moment.
think all plans are on hold at the moment.
Yeah. Well, for those of you guys watching out there, myself and Benjamin, we did a project. I guess it was 2014 when you were here in Bali, yeah?
Yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah, it
Really
doesn't
long
seem that
time.
long, but it was 2014. And when we did that one, everybody out there that's watching has probably seen the photos out there. It was the ladies with the long dresses on the Liberty Wreck. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the day before we did that shoot where you had just come in. You were doing your open water or your advanced class here just before we did the shoot.
Yep, that photo shoot is actually the first time, like the day after I got my dive certification. So I basically built an entire underwater photo shoot with the assumption that I would pass my exam. And
Amazing. I didn't know that.
thank goodness I did. Otherwise, it would have been a lot of wasted effort.
So you thought about, you envisioned this before even diving.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it was more the fact that I was being forced to go on vacation by my family, and I figured if I was going to go on vacation, I might as well look for something to do. And then what would be a good skill to learn? Oh, diving would be pretty interesting. Well, if I'm going to go dive, I need to know what to look for. Oh, wait, there's a shipwreck. Oh, no, I can't just go visit the shipwreck. I'm going to need to do something with this shipwreck. So then I posted on Facebook asking if anyone knew someone who knew how to produce underwater photo shoots. And then I got introduced to a guy called Chris Simanjuntak, who I met for the first time the day I landed from the airport, and I explained to him that I wanted to do an underwater photo shoot, but I didn't have a dive certificate yet. And he was just like, uh-huh. Okay, let's do it. And I was like, great. So really, if he hadn't come on board, this whole project would have never happened. But I feel like that's a story of every single chapter of that. So if Chris hadn't come on board, this wouldn't have happened. If Mike wasn't there, I wouldn't have had a camera because I flooded my camera, which was a point and shoot the day before. If the models didn't fly in from, one came in from Dubai, the other came in from, I think from Jakarta.
Jakarta, yeah.
Yeah, then, there would have been no project. And if, Chris's wife hadn't connected me to Ali, who provided the dresses, there would be no clothes. So there, on paper, there is no reason why this project should have ever worked. Like, shouldn't have worked.
But it did work.
It did work. It was funny because Chris called me and he's like, can we use your camera? I'm like, okay. When? He's like, tomorrow? I'm like, oh, okay.
You know, Benjamin, like Mike and I, we've been managing diving center and dive operation here in Indonesia since many years. And actually, something that we really learned is that when you put so much planning ahead of time before, let's say, a big maintenance job or something like that, it always you're going to screw it. And when you don't do like, very last minute plans here in Indonesia, everything always like comes and everybody participate much more with more enthusiasm. So I can see, this project coming out and everybody chipping in and say like, yes, we need models like this. Okay, what can we do? And everybody get more invested into it, right? So Indonesia is
there's something excited about having, the pressure, right? Like it's here, I'm here for a week. I think I had a little bit of a reputation, not much, but I mean, I had like 10,000 followers or so on Facebook, which, might be a little bit bigger deal to a local community. And so you add those elements together into a petri dish and you add some really talented people. I mean, this is not something you pull off with pure enthusiasm alone. You need talent and skill and understanding to do it safely.
They know what they're doing.
And you guys brought that whole piece of the puzzle into the equation. So then I could just, do my weird thing. I mean, I remember I was such a bad diver that someone from the safety team was behind me managing my buoyancy. So if I just started sinking too quickly, like he would just like pull me up
Yeah.
because I was going up and down because I was just focusing on like my shot.
Right.
It's pretty terrible.
It was funny because it's doing it on such a busy dive site as well. We were able to keep other people out of the chute because it wasn't like there was nobody there. We didn't close the wreck down. There was, probably 50 or 100 other people on the dive site at the time, but we were actually able to keep people out of the chute, which was quite nice.
Yes, and
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
The images coming out from it, they're incredible. Did you ever have so you were newly certified, even so you were basically getting your license to get into this photo shoot, and didn't you ever feel the pressure? Let's say, so you starting something new in a new element, being underwater. Was your focus on this project helping you to go through the difficulties that maybe a dive lesson can have, or were you feeling natural in it? How was it?
I think for me, I really enjoy having a mission. I love diving. I think there's something really fun about the exploration of it, but just floating around to me is not that stimulating. Primarily because I'm not particularly observant. I think like the best divers are the ones who are like super calm, super zen, and they just cruise in and they notice all the smallest details. And I'm like the opposite. I'm the first one to run out of oxygen. I kind of swim super quick, like all around, and I'm floating about. And it's a completely different process. But having a mission. So even when I was doing my practice dives, I had a little GoPro, and I was using my GoPro to scout potential locations. And then when we came back up on surface, I'd point and say like, I don't know where this is, but I think this is cool. And then the dive instructor would be like, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is. And so that's how we were able to map out the plan for the project. And I think for me, it was actually more enjoyable to have all of this stuff. I also think it just took away any kind of stress and pressure, which is ironic because I was focused less on all the technicalities of the dive, of the fact that I was super deep underwater. I was just focused on like what I needed to get done. And I was able to enjoy the experience and be 100% present rather than worry about any of the other technicalities. So, yeah.
And I think this is the shoot that pretty much, or at least at that time, it was your biggest, the one that created the biggest waves online, social media, press, all that kind of stuff got a lot of attention.
Absolutely. I mean, it was the first time I had ever truly gone viral and gotten a taste of what that felt like. I mean, I was trending on Facebook back when Facebook had trending. I was on the top 5 of all events happening on Facebook for a couple of days or a day.
Yeah.
And I think it was a total surprise. Like, I mean, I had experienced some level of popularity within my own social networks, but I'd never experienced what it felt like to like be part of mainstream media. Which was super ironic because then I became known as the underwater photographer who barely knew how to dive.
Yeah.
Just shot one photo. And that's kind of the funny thing is like people like to put other people into boxes, and whatever the biggest thing they remember of you is who they remember you as, which I think is very fascinating.
And do you think with that now, as you're just saying, they now put you as the underwater photographer, but when your ongoing projects that have got things to do with underwater, say Fiji, the shark savers, the not necessarily underwater projects, but the plastic pollution, the straws and all that kind of stuff, ocean conservation themes, did that first shoot in Bali, did that kind of create more of a feeling of that you wanted to conserve the ocean more, like more of a feeling of love for the ocean?
No, my conservation for the ocean happened a little, like my love for the ocean happened a little bit later. I think, so I remember the first time ever I dived in Cuba. You didn't need a certification. We basically had a 3-minute practice in a swimming pool and then just hopped into the ocean. Didn't go very deep. But I remember that being a super cool experience. It was like being in zero gravity, and we were going through a couple little arches and so forth, and it was just a really great experience. But I don't think the idea that the ocean was dying actually hit me until significantly later.
Okay.
The interesting thing about my conservation projects is that I become a conservationist as a result of doing the projects themselves. So with the project in Fiji where I created a shark shepherd, it started off because I had a free ticket to Fiji because I was going there to teach a photography workshop. And as I was talking to some friends, I asked them, well, what is there to do in Fiji? And someone said, oh, they're really great shark dives. And this was at a time where I was like, I want my work to mean something. I don't just want to create cool things for the sake of them being cool. And then I started like doing a little digging, and I realized that, shark fin soup was a big thing and that sharks are actually fairly important. And then I started talking to some different shark experts, and then I started realizing, oh, there's like 100 million sharks that are killed every single year. Like they're an apex predator. Like all these things are really important. And then I got to go diving with them, and then in parallel, I was planning the shoot. So the idea of creating a shark shepherd was the idea that, if sharks are the shepherds of the sea, then humans should be the shepherds of the sharks, right? Like we can't get rid of them. We can't do their jobs, so we need to keep them alive. And it was this idea of sort of, and then the concept was built, and then the campaign grew from there. And so I actually I start with the intention of doing something that has more meaning, and as I do them, I learn more about the problem. So it's sort of a reverse of many different conservationists. It's a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing is that ultimately the products I create, I think, appeal to an audience that doesn't necessarily preach to the choir,
right?
Because it just have like an inherently different approach to it. It's a bad thing in that my information is fairly surface level. So I'm very much a generalist and not a specialist, unless it's a topic that I've tackled recurrently many, many times. So ocean plastics right now, I would feel very comfortable talking about a ton of ocean plastic statistics because I've done like 3, 4, or 5 projects now on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
And who's come like with say the plastic ones? Did someone come up to you with the idea, or was that something that you came up with yourself?
No, it was the same thing as the shark project. In that I was presented, or I was rather looking for an opportunity, and tried to tie it back to impact. So basically, I was coming back home to Montreal for my sister's wedding, and this was, I think, 2016. And I came back for the wedding, and my mom showed me something that she had seen online. This girl who made mermaid tails in Montreal, and she thought it was cool. And I was like, oh, that's like the most beautiful mermaid tail I've ever seen. I'd love to collaborate with her, but I don't just want to take a pretty photo. I want to take photos that mean something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, what's going on in the oceans, and how can I tie it to mermaids? And then it was at the time where the Great Pacific Garbage Patch was getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So then I started connecting the dots together. And so it's like, okay, well, what if we could have some large amount of plastic bottles? I don't know, maybe like 10,000. And then I was talking to a friend who was saying he was interested in getting to production. So I just said, oh, well, do you want to try to find me 10,000 plastic bottles? And then he started calling a couple people, and they replied. And then suddenly I had 10,000 bottles and a mermaid tail.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like one thing led to another in that way. But it really started with the intention of, I want to do something that has an impact. Like I want to do something that is meaningful. And it's interesting though, because what the definition of impact, I think, for anyone who's done it for any amount of time, actually changes over time, right? Because you start to understand the scope of impact. Impact is neither good nor bad. You are going to have an impact. Some of it good, some of it bad.
For sure.
As an example, in this plastic mermaid photo shoot that we did, where we took 10,000 plastic bottles and put a mermaid on top of it, and then hung a camera from the ceiling to take these like beautiful shots of a mermaid drowning in these plastic bottles. We actually used glitter on her eyelashes and all over her body as part of the body paint.
Yep.
And that was the reason why I think Greenpeace Hong Kong wouldn't run it.
Oh, really?
Because they're like, oh, well, they're trying to fight against microplastics, and glitter has plastics.
Gotcha.
Oh, glitter is made from plastics, and I didn't know that. Right. So it's like, it's one of those things where like you just kind of learn over time how deep the problem runs. Right. And so similarly, that campaign was to get people to pledge to stop using plastic bottles. So I was appealing to a consumer facing problem.
Right.
But today is a little different. But let's say 3 months ago, plastic pollution awareness was at its maximum.
Yes.
The problem isn't just on the consumption side, but rather on the production side. Right. If you don't cut the tap off, then there's no then there's nothing a consumer can do if they have no other choices. And so then you start like shifting the narrative, and you start learning like, where can I be the most impactful? And I think maybe that is maybe the more important question, is like, okay, I have a set of skills. Where can it be applied and why? And are you doing something because you just want to do something, or are you doing something because what you're going to do is going to make a difference? What is the outcome that you're trying to have, and how do your skills fit in? And that line of questioning is actually really, really, really frustrating to be a part of, because
I can
it's
imagine.
so much work. Yeah.
Well, the plastic bottle, where did you end up doing it? In Montreal?
Yeah, the first project where we put a mermaid on 10,000 plastic bottles was done in Montreal.
Okay.
I did a project in Greece where we took a truckload of plastic and threw it into the ocean,
Right.
and then retrieved it. And then I did another project in Vietnam where we took 168,000 plastic straws that were collected over 9 months and made a Guinness World Record series out of it. So it's the parting of the plastic sea. So we just see these two 8-foot tall waves kind of parting, that someone could walk through and get a sense of the magnitude of the problem and see how small individual actions added up over time. I did a project in Singapore where we took 18,000 plastic cups that were collected in a day and a half with the help of the government. It's just crazy how much stuff comes out. And
so
this,
sorry to, because I think this is also very important to know for our audiences, the way you source your plastic is through recycling facilities, or
it changes every single time. So it really depends on what the local problem or the local situation is. So in Montreal, we worked with a recycling facility. In Greece, we worked on an island called Corfu, which doesn't have recycling, except that they also don't have drinking water available, because they emptied the wells and the natural aquifers because of tourism and overconsumption. And so the government there gives a massive discount on water. So water comes down to about, I think, €1 per 2-liter bottle or something like that. But that's the only source of water everyone has.
Right.
And so everyone drinks out of plastic bottles there. So we just basically put a call out to the community, and then kids collected bottles from their homes, their families. People dropped it off because we were working out of Marina, and they were dropping it off. And the only way to recycle it, it was like a truck from the other city, like 5 hours away or so, had to come by and like collect it. And so that was the only way to recycle, which we did for hours, which isn't a solution, but it was slightly better than what would have normally happened, which was landfill, because all they have is a landfill that actually is overflowing.
Right. Well, you were saying about the impact for the Greece one. Do you think it had a local impact for that?
Well, this is the thing,
so much
right?
A community involvement.
It's really, so my idea of using art for impact has really changed and transformed over time. When you enter, I think, the world as an artist trying to connect with the world and touch people's hearts, your goal is to reach as many people as possible. And maybe you hope that if you can touch the hearts of the right person, change can happen. So if you enter the impact world with that frame of mind, let's say you're an underwater photographer, and you're like, if I capture a photo of a seahorse with Q-tips, it could change the way people see and interact with the underwater world. And that's one strategy to go for. However, it becomes really hard to track the impact of what you do. So you might be able to say, I had 100 million views on something, but you wouldn't be able to say what those 100 million views accomplished. And I think that's actually it's partially a design problem. If you do not think about what you want to do beyond just touching someone's heart, then you're never going to design the constraints around that. And so this is something that I've had to learn the hard way on my own. And it's actually the reason I started a podcast of my own called Impact Everywhere, because I wanted to really figure out how other people doing impact were measuring impact. What is the language that they're using around impact to explain it, to measure it, to sell it? Because if you can't measure it, then you can't sell it.
Right.
And that becomes really important to make impact work sustainable. Because why would someone hire you, let's say it's $10,000. Why would someone hire you for $10,000 to create an art piece versus funding $10,000 of beach cleanup? Because now they can say how many kilos they've removed, and it sounds a lot more tangible, but it hasn't addressed the root of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to talk about the impact that your work has had, you need a design for it. So you need to either collaborate with a nonprofit that's trying to affect policy, for example, because now you're going to be able to say, my work has helped shift policy from state A to state B. Or I have gone into this school, and as a result of empowering kids to create a thing, the school has now changed their policy around this thing. So yes, you can have the awareness component. It doesn't remove your ability to touch hearts and minds, but also keep in mind, try to measure what is actually possible. Because when you do that, I think, and this is all hypothetical here, and sort of anecdotal, but the idea is if you can create the blueprint for other people to follow, you can say, by empowering students to speak up and create something that makes a stir in their community, the schools will listen. That becomes a template that other people can follow, and it becomes more than just a piece of art.
Right.
It becomes a tool that everyone can now leverage. And so I think those are the kinds of questions that I've been asking myself, and they're not so much answers as much as the arc of questioning. And this is kind of what I was getting to as impact is complicated.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And I sometimes do miss the days where I could just like roll into a project and say, all right, guys, let's do something dumb that we've never done before. It's going to be cool. But it just doesn't work with impact.
Because some of your, as you say, the one that we did before here in Bali was just a spur of the moment, get a
Exactly.
group, get a team together, have a little bit of fun with it, and then see what you can come up with. Now, I guess you're getting a lot more pressure because it sounds like not so much that, well, I guess, are you getting hired for some of these projects, or is it still just a community effort, or are you getting hired by corporations or communities to highlight this stuff?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So my current business model, which who knows what it's going to look like in times of COVID-19, but it's essentially designed, it's split into like 3 phases. There's like a design phase, a prototyping phase, and then an execution phase. And so I've actually started I started to operate as a consultant in the first 2 phases and an artist in the final phase, as well as a lead generation phase. And I do that primarily because artists only get paid to execute. Right. So if I commission an underwater photograph from you and it takes you 10 years to get that photograph, you don't get paid until you've captured that photograph. But if you're a consultant and you were just giving me advice on how to take that photograph, you don't actually need to do anything. You just need to provide the framework and you charge for that, right? To be a consultant, to give a piece of advice. And I found it just to be so ineffective to have so many conversations with people who go like, oh, what would you do if? And then you go through this whole exercise of asking questions and thinking about an idea, and then you're back into the pitching phase, and you have nothing to show for it if it falls through. And it can fall through for any number of reasons, whether it's policies have changed, and doesn't really matter what. The thing with impact is that you can't skip the design part unless someone's already done all that design work for you. But for the kind of work that I've done, generally speaking, I haven't yet encountered a situation where I could just slot myself in, where all the right questions had been pre-asked and I just had to drop in to do the thing. For the most part, people reach out to me because they want something really big, really community driven that they've never seen before. And so what that means is they have no idea what it looks like. And part of the challenge is that every project that I do, I document it. And so there's a behind the scene video that makes it look super easy, that a community came together and then magic happened. But what they don't see is that story of how people came together is also a story.
Right.
And that story, so there are 2 stories that happen. There's the story you tell and the story of what actually happened. And so what you're effectively building with every campaign is the final result, so the output of what you're doing. There is also the story, the process of what you've created. And now with impact, there's also the outcome. What have you achieved? And if you want to do impact properly, I think it's important to consider all 3 of those. And for most people, they don't see that part of it. They just see the final result. And so it becomes a little bit of a challenge. I've actually stopped trying to do things on my own as my projects have gotten too large and too big and too complex. So what I'll try to do is I'll always start with a corporate partner who has dollars and money and funds, and match it to a nonprofit. Or it'll be the reverse. I'll work with a nonprofit who's willing to put in the time to think and prepare all the assets and so forth, and then match them to the right corporate client that I can discover and find along the way. So it doesn't work without money. I've just found it to be completely ineffective and very frustrating.
I'm sure. Well, what other ocean-based projects have you? We've looked at the Fiji one. We've looked at the one here in Bali. What other diving ones have you been working on?
So I've done 2 projects, one that was released and I got paid for, and one that was never released and never got paid for. The one that was released was a collaboration with Ballantine's, the whiskey company.
Okay.
This is my pre-impact days, and we actually built a set in a cenote in Mexico, and we created a cormorant fisherman. So we had a stuffed cormorant with a log inside of it, inside of styrofoam, that was hung onto a fiberglass boat that we sunk 30 meters, 100 feet underwater on top of a toxic layer of hydrogen sulfide, and balanced it out with a couple ratchet straps and life jackets, and did a photo shoot underwater with a model there.
That was cool. That was before. Yeah. No, that was after.
This was before the Shark Shepherd.
Okay.
So it was before I got into Impact.
Gotcha.
And they reached out and they basically said, "Hey, is there a project you've never done yet that you'd like to do? Because we want to fund dreams and passion, basically." And so I just dreamed up this thing. Yeah, and I just dreamed up this thing that I had no idea how to do, and they found the talent in order to make it happen.
Very
and
cool.
So, yeah, I, as an individual, once again, I'm the photographer / creative director, the guy who came up with the idea. But in this one specifically, it was even more hands-off than usual. So you would think that with more money comes more flexibility. It's actually the opposite. With more money comes more restrictions, because it comes with more liability and more risk, and more dollars get thrown in. And so you actually take a step back and you do your role in the silo or vertical that you're put into, which is kind of interesting. But the technical director on that was Rob Franklin, who some listeners may know. He's quite famous and has done a ton of underwater productions in the past. And he also did a lot of the underwater filming with the Gates housing, Red, don't know which Red, maybe an Epic. So that was one that went through. That was pretty cool. It's got the most beautiful.
At the photos on the screen now.
Yeah, I think it has one of the most beautiful shot videos. Like, you can see it's like full studio grade quality.
Yeah.
The project that didn't go through was an impact project. This was at the time where I was desperately trying to prove that it was possible to combine impact and fantasy. And at the time, there was this active campaign that was an anti-dredging campaign that was being pushed forward in Australia to protect the Great Barrier Reef.
Yep.
And it was, I think maybe some people would remember, Adani was trying to clear out some shipping lanes. They wanted to dig out a channel so that these ships could just zip on by. And so I built an entire campaign. I started because I posted online on Facebook, "Hey, anyone know where I can find an underwater excavator?" Because I thought it could be a really great symbol for dredging. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't actually expecting an answer, but some dive group in Poland actually reached out and they're like, "Hey, we have this excavator and we're willing to help you produce it and create it." And so they did that. The conditions were super hard to shoot, and at the end of the day, I think the images were definitely not my favorite. However, the problem was not any of the technical, because I would have released it anyways, because it's not just about the final result, but about the process.
Right.
But the campaign won. It's like Adani got stopped. Greenpeace won.
Oh, okay.
There's
So
no more need for the campaign,
you're
and
kidding.
I couldn't find another story that required dredging. So then I had this entire project that was designed around something that was no longer necessary.
And they won
because,
that quickly.
Yeah, because it worked so well. And I
Wow.
was like, oh, well, what do I do?
I'm sure if it was in Poland, it was in a cold lake or something.
It was in a cold lake. It was extremely hard to shoot. It was super silty.
Yeah.
So any movement from the model, who really struggled to hold her breath because it was cold, super cold. So instead of like, I don't know, a minute and a half of breath hold, it was something closer to 15, 20 seconds,
Wow.
which is really, really hard to take a picture properly in.
Yep.
So yeah, that was a tough experience and pretty expensive, I think, for everyone that got involved, because, on these projects that are volunteer powered, once again, everyone pours their time, their money, their effort, all in hopes of doing something greater than themselves. And I think for me, it was definitely something I feel really sad never quite hit the light of day.
Did you put the behind the scenes out anyways, or no?
There is a behind the scene video floating out there. Okay. If you type Wong, Poland, I think you'll see that the Polish dive center actually released something.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But it just, it's the folks from Jolly Diver. So you could watch that if you were curious.
I have a question for you. So you have some winning and some lost, right? So, and you put so much efforts into it, like you fly all the way to Poland, coordinate with lots of people around, and so you spend lots of time in your project like that. How do you cope when the project doesn't go through and you don't obtain that final result that you wished for? Like, how do you get, let's say, back and get the motivation to go into the next one,
I'm thinking, actually. I think with every project, there is always a possibility that it goes nowhere. So the fear that what you do is not going to work out never goes away. Mm-hmm. The sense of the imposter syndrome, I think, of like, oh, is this the time I'm going to screw up? I don't think ever really goes away, because ultimately the fear goes away once you're doing the same thing over and over, and then it comes with like certainty, right? So if you guys have now dived a zillion times, you're not going to worry about diving 10 meters deep. Like not one thing could possibly go wrong that you couldn't handle.
Right.
Right. So, but then you've also lost kind of, I guess, the creativity. Well, actually, that's not true. There's some people who really like fall in love with routine and are able to remain creative in a routine. I'm sort of the opposite. I gain the most excitement when I'm doing something I've never done before. Mm-hmm. And so I have this I'm sort of a thrill chaser and adrenaline junkie in that way. And so I just need to always pursue something that I've never done before, because if I've already done it and I know I'm going to succeed at it, then why bother doing it? I think I do draw the line when it comes to projects that, I have been asked and invited to do multiple plastic awareness campaigns, and I still say yes to them because I know how to do them, but it isn't necessarily always for my own enjoyment. It's more like, oh, I think this is something that the world needs to see. It's something that I am uniquely suited to do. And so I have a duty and a responsibility to do it. So I think there's a little bit of that balance. But even then, even when you're being asked to repeat something, I always try to do something that I've never done before. Like, what can you layer onto it that you've never done to keep things interesting? Yeah. And I think it's just important to always push the boundaries of what's possible, because otherwise, you're just going to create more of the same. And it's important to grow. I like to say that there's this gap, right? There's a gap between what you could do and what people are willing to let you try and do. And I don't think that gap really truly goes away, because the more you do, the more you learn. And so now your boundaries shift. So when I did this underwater project where we tied the models underwater in Bali, that was like the craziest thing I could have ever thought of. And then when we started putting a set underwater, I realized how easy it was just to drop a model down without have to worry about building a set. Right. And then when there was a shark involved, it was like, man, I wish I could have just taken pretty photos of this girl, because but now when you have to like wait for the shark to be in the right place relative to the girl,
Yes.
and it's like freezing and everyone's just there waiting, you're just like, oh
Come on,
wow, it
shark.
used to be so much easier. How have things gotten so complicated? So I just think it changes, right? But the challenges always stay there. The doubts always follow you. But I think that's important to always retain anyways.
We're still looking. We've got the picture, the straw campaign up. Is that still a
Strawpocalypse.
Strawpocalypse? Exactly. Is that still set up somewhere, or did that just get set up for the shoot and then taken down again, or is that still there?
Yeah, so I've moved from building temporary sets, I suppose, for my photo shoots to actually moving into temporary art installations or semi-permanent art installations. Yep. And that was actually a really big shift. It's really hard for, once again, to make people see you differently from whichever box they put you into. And so I think when you're put into the photography box, you're expected to build a temporary photography set, and moving on and saying like, no, actually, I'd love to build something that will stay there longer so that more people can come and experience it. It took about a year for me to get my first kind of stakeholder on board to do it. So the straw campaign was the second time. Actually, when I was building the straw campaign, I had never done an installation before. And it was over 9 months of work because of the time it took to collect the straws and then find the right partnerships, find the right sponsor, find the right location that would host it. And so all those pieces had to come together. And ultimately, the sad thing about temporary installations is that they end up getting taken down regardless. I mean, temporary or semi-permanent all get destroyed. So, all we do is give these straws a second chance and an opportunity to dispose of them a little bit more responsibly. But there is no solution to it, right? No. So we collected 168,000 plastic straws, and eventually we spent, it was up for 2 months. And I think about, I can't remember the numbers of foot traffic. I think it's something along the lines of 1,000 people coming through it every day. And so that combined with the fact that a lot of people were taking photographs, like 1 in 3 people who would actually look at the installation would take a photograph of it. So you can assume that it actually continued and reached a number of different people. But ultimately, like, those straws had to go somewhere. Yeah. The mall wasn't going to keep it indefinitely. We tried shopping it around, but no one wanted to pay to ship it and have it reset up and reinstalled somewhere. It was just too logistically complicated. So then ultimately the whole thing got taken down, and we looked around to figure out like what was the best way to recycle it. So we could have sent it to TerraCycle, but that would have meant shipping it cross-continentally from Vietnam to the United States to figure out what to do with it. That was like massive carbon footprint, massive cost. And so we just looked for a local solution, and straws can't be recycled in most high-end facilities, let alone low-end facilities. So the best next thing was to ground it up as feed for concrete. Okay. So we found someone that would take it, and now it's been ground up into concrete somewhere.
Now it's a sidewalk.
Yeah, now it's a sidewalk somewhere, which is better than if it was just floating around in the ocean. Sure. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's definitely not great, right? And it's funny because people get so upset over it. You're just like, oh, but what did you do with the straws? I'm like, this is what happens every day. This is like a marginal percentage. If you care about what's happening to this, care about the rest of it, exactly. Right? Like the disposal story of how hard it is to figure out what to do with this is the same challenge that like the entire world is facing right now. And that's kind of part of it. So, but there is a frustration that comes with it. I mean, you just think, man, all this manpower, all the flying, to go there and do the project and all the resources spent and time and energy, like, is it really worth it? Does it really matter? And it's just so hard to like answer these questions, but you do the best you can. Yep. You apply the learnings that you learn along the way, and just maybe you might make the world a better place.
Yeah. I mean, I think this one here, especially with such a big thing, about straws in the last few years, something like this definitely helps draw attention to it as well. People that would not normally pay attention to the issue, they would look on the photos on the net and say, "Oh, wow, look at that!" That definitely has more of an impact, I think.
Yeah, we did a survey of the people who actually went there and attended it, and although 80% of people who we surveyed already knew about the plastic problem, um, it changed the minds of 92% of them
Wow.
because they are actually able to see how small little interactions added up over time. So I take that as like a metric of success,
Oh, really?
but once again, it's still a little bit anecdotal as opposed to quantitative,
Really?
which is sometimes really the only thing that most companies care about.
True, but as you said earlier, hard to figure it out on this kind of scale. Well, what are you up to now?
Yeah.
What
What
are your
is your
current
creative
projects?
mind thinking right now in this very hard time for everyone and COVID-19?
Oh, COVID-19. I had just gotten rid of my place in San Francisco. I was going to spend my year as a digital nomad, give or take, going around finding interesting guests for my podcast who are tackling positive impact in unexpected ways and continued developing, speaking at conferences and trying to build new ideas that where I could apply these new theories that I was learning. So, like, how might you create the measurable conditions under which impact can happen, and so forth. And yeah, COVID-19 happened. I got grounded. I got sent to my room, just like the rest of the world, about a month and a half in. And it turns out that every single skill that I had, or every bucket that I was currently in, uh, sort of got canceled. So my speaking engagements got canceled,
Yep.
right? My travels got canceled. So that's a revenue stream gone. My consulting work kind of disappeared because now all the agencies have basically canceled every single event and activation that they had going. And people think of me as an activation and installation guy now because those were the last few projects that I've done. And then the installations that I was going to build for the events that were canceled also disappeared.
Yikes.
So I ended up in this really interesting spot of being like, what am I supposed to do with myself? So what I've been focused on has been the podcast.
Yep.
So it's given me, just like you guys, a phenomenal amount of extra time to go out and find interesting people. So today, actually, I interviewed Louis Siosis, who directed The Cove, Racing Extinction, Game
Okay.
Changers, which is super exciting. And then I have a community that I'm trying to develop. So over time, although I've gone viral many times, I've created pieces that have millions of views. I realize that I've been really good at building an audience. I've been really bad at building a community.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm experimenting with what it's like to build a community while I have routine. And then I'm trying to figure out how human connection works by working on a webinar that I host every Friday as part of this podcast where I bring people together. I bring in a presenter where we can talk about impact and then break out into little workshop groups so that everyone can start thinking about impact and contributing towards a challenge that we create. So that's what I've been doing on the personal, I guess, development side of things. And then, I feel really lucky and privileged. I have electricity, I have space, I have family, I have health, I have a roof over my head, I have internet, I have all these things that I think many people take for granted. And so with that comes this duty to contribute somehow to the coronavirus crisis. So I've joined the Get Us PPE team in the United States. They're the largest database connecting local supply to demand within the United States of PPE, which is personal protective equipment. So surgical masks, gloves, all that stuff. And I'm helping them sort of as a campaign director or a creative director to ideate and design a number of different campaigns to reach different communities to ensure that the frontline workers get the care that they need. And so that's how I'm contributing on a more strategic front and lending my collaborative brain to the efforts.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Just getting out there and making it a part of the current effort as well.
Yeah.
The COVID stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's so important to stay, like, one of the things as a creative, I don't know how it was for you guys, but when this thing hit, I just went through this weird moment of feeling so powerless and so useless.
Mhm.
It's like in the event of a zombie apocalypse, photography is not very useful.
Yeah.
You need a bigger
You're
camera
just
to
like,
smack the zombies.
What are we gonna do
yeah, it's like,
now?
what? Yeah, and I've always joked about it, but it just never, I didn't think it was going to happen. And
Right.
it did.
I
I
think we
mean,
all
sort of did. And so I had this sort of existential crisis of figuring out, like, well, I have these skills. What can I do with them? And it turns out that you have to go out and look for the opportunities. You
Yeah.
have to, reach out to people and offer to help them. And that's how the people who can use you actually find you. So
Mhm.
I think if there's one thing that's been awesome is just, not only being able to help others, so reaching out, but also when other people, like I've said yes to so many of these podcasts and interviews and so forth, because now I have time to give. And I just think it's a really cool time. You see how people react to things, right? Some
Yeah.
people react by being as generous as possible, and others react by shutting down everything. And
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see that
Right.
the human level of how people are reacting to this whole thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's what we did too. So basically, one day to the other, our whole diving industry collapsed and everything. But as you did, we created a following in the years of people, and we never had really the time to engage with them. So that's what we're doing right now. We're giving our time
Amazing.
Building
to
the
engage with
community.
them, and it's, as you said, it's very interesting to see how the reactions are coming out, and how the community actually is more benefiting and building more around that.
It's a whole lesson in psychology at the moment, watching how different people are reacting to different things. It's interesting. Sit on the
Yeah,
sidelines,
absolutely.
people watching, shall we say, at the moment.
Yeah, but it's cool that you guys are finding ways to give back, right? Like you had to go out of the box and confines of what you knew to, learn a new skill and figure out a new way to give back. And it's through this that you're going to find the people who are going through the same things.
Yep.
And that you can share a common passion with. So, and so we see like the best of humanity and the worst of humanity all at the same time, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It is, for sure.
But on the other hand, we also wish, and we're pretty confident that sooner or later this will be over this time. And we wish for you to come over here again and let's work on a project outdoor and get in the water
Yeah.
again.
I'd love that. I mean, maybe I don't want to ramble on this too much, but maybe it would be interesting to put this out into the universe. I'm really hoping to be able to create a project that leverages the power of art to create a change in a community. So when I went to visit Bali, I connected with the Gili Eco Trust, and they were talking about this challenge that they were facing where, tourists would come in and not respect the place because they were just there to party. The dive shops, because they were the wealthier sort of expats, were there doing all the conservation work. And then the locals were leading kind of scuba tours because snorkeling tours, because that's like the lowest cost barrier to entry, but they're just trying to make a living. So really they just want to pack their boats as full as possible. They're sort of anchoring anywhere because their primary concern is generating revenue to keep living and amongst themselves. So we had this like big social economical challenge. And for me, I've been trying to find ways that art can be used as a solution for these problems. Right. And so what would it look like if you built an underwater art installation that created more business for the scuba guys, the snorkeling guys, that created an educational opportunity for the scuba tours, that created a selfie opportunity for the tourists, but that maybe could grow organically over time. That was a community effort. And maybe because it was attracting so much traffic or attention, that it would get rid of the anchoring problem and so on and so forth. And so I've been really thinking of different models under which art can be used as not just something to be seen, but something to be interacted with and something that can actually catalyze a change, right? It's not just about dropping a statue underwater and saying, hey, corals are growing faster on them. It's not about that. It's about how is this something that the community can benefit from, but how can that community benefit also benefit the environment around them, and how do these pieces all fit together? And I think those kinds of projects can only happen with a lot of communication, a lot of community on the ground, and a lot of like willingness to talk and explore and explain. So, if you guys or anyone else is interested in exploring something like this, it's something
it sounds very interesting.
I'd really like to figure out once all of this blows over.
Yeah.
And
And
Yeah.
actually, Bali, the local community is so strong that actually it makes it a very good ground to create something like that, to
Yeah,
create that
yeah.
cooperation.
Yeah, the
They're all
traditional, every
connected.
community
Yeah,
is very strong.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Though I do have to say, Bali has become a little bit weird, and the Instagram
Right. There's a lot of that.
photo-ness of it all. I mean, if you guys noticed this in the underwater world, do people forget about the experience in pursuit of the photograph?
Uh, well,
Yes and
probably
no.
like beginner divers that they get in there, they do that. They probably think more about taking a selfie of themselves rather than, whoa, shit, what am I doing now? Something like that. So that actually help
In
us
a place
because
like
it
Manta
keeps their
Point.
mind occupied. But we see that in all these prime locations that we visit, across Indonesia, there is just like this narcissism going around
Yep.
and into selfie and
It's the one where they get a manta and they want to have a photo where they're doing this with the manta, and it's like, well, get away from that manta.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So
Yeah,
there's definitely some of that.
Yeah, it's been like it was such a weird experience for me when I went there because I'd been to Bali, right? And then I went back and I was like, whoa, like people don't go for the experience, they go for the photograph. And so you have a lineup of
Yeah.
people lining up to take
Yes.
the exact same photo.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that is not why you're here, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Or maybe it is. And if it is, it's just weird. And the fact that traffic is defined by the best selfie times
Yep.
is the weirdest thing, right? Like, so sunset happens in one, either the rice fields or whatever. And so everyone is
Yeah.
going there
Oh, it's
at the
nuts.
exact same time. It's crazy. It's
There's a
crazy to
temple
me.
up near where the wreck was. There's a temple up there, and it started getting popular on Instagram.
The gates
where
of
you would get a
heaven.
mirror or the phone screen, and it would create a reflection. So you had the gates and Agung, the mountain in the background, and you would get a photo with your reflection. So it looked like a lake. And all of a sudden, it became really popular on Instagram. And now you go there,
You
and
take a ticket.
you have to get a ticket. There's a 2.5 hour line. There's
They announce
one
your
guy
number.
standing there. And he's
Not
got
right
the
now.
mirror. And so you pay him to take your photograph, and everybody just takes the exact same photograph. It's just bizarre.
But that's why, like we started also like we locals, and now when we go, and there are still so many hidden gems in here. So when we find them, we never geotag where we are or something like this. Yeah, somewhere. Oh, where did you take that? Because we saw here how it really can blow off, and have one day to another. So we went there in that place 1 year before.
And there was nobody there.
There was nobody. It was me and Mike. The gates, the volcano there, fantastic experience. The year after, with people taking numbers and number 350.
Instagram tourists.
Our guide takes our guest over there, been waiting 3 hours queuing to take that one photo. 3 hours.
Insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's insane. We need to change all these trends. And actually, now during this COVID-19 crisis, of course, here is quiet. But also, I noticed that Instagram is going more quiet a little bit. We have, like less pictures of bikini girls showing the butts and things like that. We start to have a little bit more of those nature shots back into the equation. So it gets less flooded in the trending area with all these instant selfies taken just to be instant famous,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing, but I don't know if it's going to last, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Hopefully, how's the economy in Bali though? Like, I mean, so much tourism disappeared.
Yeah. It's, the economy here is 80% tourism, so
it's
very
entirely
quiet.
that. So the food economy probably still going, like those services that you need, like internet companies are doing well, but the entire tourism is collapsed. And
how are people surviving?
Right,
Food.
we are not seeing the causes yet of it, the impact of this, not yet. It depends how long we're gonna stretch this period into it. So like drivers, they don't drive anymore. Many drivers, for instance, they took a loan to pay for the car. That's it's a common way here in Indonesia that you take lots of loans for your house, for your motorbike, for your car. and those loans needs to be paid. Those companies now are taking back the cars, so we will have a strong psychological impact in here to the local community for sure, and to us too, I think.
For sure.
But
as
some sort.
Going back to the strong sense of community and family here, a lot of people are going back to so instead of living here in town, they're going back to their local communities,
Their villages,
and so I don't think you'll ever find starvation or anything like that here.
Also, the land is quite rich.
They live off the land fairly easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, it's hurting financially for sure.
Yeah, and stress. So when you have a burden of X amount of money that you need to pay, and all of a sudden you don't have revenue anymore,
but it's not something that you really notice yet.
Not yet.
But I'm sure we will.
Finger crossed.
On how long it takes.
Finger crossed. However, they're already talking about potentially reopening in May, and guess we're gonna have first the first people that got rid of the virus. Who are they? It's China. So China will start to come first, back to revitalize the economy.
Either China or Australia. I think Australia and New Zealand are on their way to being COVID free.
Yeah, but they are so strict that they probably will be the last one. When the whole world will be already open, Australia and New Zealand will be still. No, we're still shut. Watching the world from the window, like, oh, what's good there? Everybody looks clear. No, not yet.
Yeah, it's such uncertain times. It's interesting to watch.
It is.
We'll see.
All right, I think we could wrap it up.
But that was a great chat.
For having a great chat.
And it was fantastic to expose your work, which really means something out there. And definitely we put all the links of your podcast, and send us the whole bunch of maybe now so that we can pass it into the description and people can follow and get in touch with you.
Very good. Hey, thank you so much for having me. I wish you the best with your podcast and community building experiments.
Thank you.
Hopefully this whole thing blows over sooner rather than later, so you guys can be back up and exploring and shooting.
Yeah.
Doing what you love.
Yeah.
We look forward to see you here again.
Yeah. Well, once again, let me know if you guys have any ideas or community problems that could be solved through art.
Cool.
Love to get that started. Yeah.
Sounds awesome. All right.
All the best, guys.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Hey.
See you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.